It's Wednesday, September 29th, and the time for your Barbados Today morning news update. The economic hardship due to the prolonged COVID-19 pandemic is pushing hundreds of new households onto government's long list of families needing help with food, utility bills, and other necessities. That's according to Special Advisor to the Prime Minister on Poverty Alleviation, Corey Lane, who revealed that scores of traditionally well-to-do families are now in need of assistance. Lane tells Barbados Today an additional 1,400 households have now been added to the 4,300 placed on the administration's Adopt a Family program last year.
A lot of times we talk about the most vulnerable. We think of traditional poor, traditional poverty. What we're seeing now is that, as they describe it, the middle class holding on by these things and a lot of them being unable to maintain the lifestyle that they've set up for themselves, unable to pay the mortgage and so on. And whereas along the time the focus is first placed on the absolute poor, we actually have a double whammy with the middle class because they are not accustomed to and they are in a lesser position to get. And it is actually something to underscore because Barbados finds itself like that in the world. As an upper middle class country, we are not able to secure certain grants, although we, with living here, understand that we still need them. And similarly, in the country, the middle class and upper middle class persons are not qualified with various criteria we have for the most vulnerable. But they will explain to you, they have the electronic gate, they have the throw plastic on the house, but the cupboards are empty.
Over the course of the pandemic, Lane's office has facilitated assistance to the tune of over $60 million, including $15.3 million in cash grants that were offset with donations totaling $4.3 million from Barbadian companies based here and the diaspora.
When you look at the hampers, the food vouchers, the water tanks, the garden startup kits, the household cleaning kits, the hygiene kits from the Barbados Red Cross, the Climate Fund, a number of supermarkets and so on, we were able, they actually would have cost us, not in dollars amount, but in terms of the total cost or value, we'll use value instead of cost of $60 million. And just a quarter of that would have been from taxpayers' money. That is pretty good. About a 1/8 would have been food donation. And then looking at going forward, I believe that we can spend it probably another $15 million or so in trying to COVID remain. So that's the overall cost.
The Royal Barbados Police Force is to become the Barbados Police Service when the country transitions to Republic status. Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs Dale Marshall made the announcement as a bill to amend the Constitution was laid in Parliament on Tuesday. Marshall said when Barbados becomes a republic, the force can no longer be called the Royal Barbados Police Force because it will no longer be the force of the Queen.
So the Royal Barbados Police Force will stop being called the Royal Barbados Police Force because it will no longer be the police force of the Queen. And it will be the police force of our country. And so, Cabinet has agreed, and this Constitution provides that the Royal Barbados Police Force will become the Barbados Police Service. That is what it will be called. And there are two elements to this. One, we had to get rid of the Royal anyway. But two, and I say this as Attorney General, the police force as it is now and as we want it to be in the future has to be more than the notion of brute strength, a force pushing against people and pushing against objects. Because policing has long ago stopped being centered on brawn and force. And therefore, as we build out a police force dealing with IT and cybercrime and money laundering, a whole set of things which have nothing to do with your ability to kick and cuff and defend yourself, we recognize that the concept of a police service is more in keeping with the modern image of our police officers.
He said that the Constitution will also be amended to take the power of appointing and removing the head of state away from a prime minister and to the parliament.
under the current arrangements, the concept of a removal of a Governor General is something that doesn't arise. That is in the hands of the Prime Minister. We are taking the removal of a Governor General, of a President, out of the hands of the Prime Minister. And, sir, this is, you really got to be courageous to do some of the things we've done. We have taken the power of appointment of judges out of the hands of the Prime Minister and effectively put it in the hands of the Judicial Selection Committee. We are now taking the appointment and removal of a Governor General in the hands of a Prime Minister and putting it in the hands of Parliament, of the state. And so, in order under this amendment, sir, because they will be appointing a Governor General for a fixed term, President. Under this arrangement, because they'll be removing a President who when appointed will have a 4-year term, but eligible for reappointment. We have to put special arrangements in place. No longer can the Prime Minister send a note verbal and say, please remove so-and-so, we want to appoint somebody else. There's a process for the removal.
A need to review the first past the post system of voting, make it easier for citizens to own land, introduce a Citizens Advice Bureau, and grant greater freedom for Rastafarians to practice their beliefs are among suggestions from Barbadians ahead of the shift to a Republican form of government on November 30th. The recommendations were among several from callers during the first in a series of virtual town hall meetings to discuss a draft charter for Barbados. The discussion was anchored by a blue ribbon panel appointed to advise government on the transition, the Republican Status Transition Advisory Subcommittee on Fundamental Principles, Rights and Freedoms. The ultimate goal of the town hall meetings, according to the co-moderator and veteran broadcaster Julian Rogers, is to lay the foundation for a much broader form of consultation on changes to the Constitution of Barbados.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
To news from the region, the head of St. Lucia's Ezra Long Laboratory warns that the lack of compliance to COVID-19 protocols by some people is undermining the country's pandemic response. We get more in this report from HTS News Force.
The director of the Ezra Long Laboratory, Dr. Wayne Owen Felicien, is at the front and center of St. Lucia's fight against COVID-19. With the nation in the grip of the fourth wave of the deadly virus, his warning is simple but stark.
SARS-CoV-2 is real. We're seeing it every day. A lot of people are losing their lives. We need to work together to solve this problem. We have vaccination, which is time-honored. We've used it to solve a lot of problems, a lot of pandemics. We still have it at our disposal. We should try to get as many persons vaccinated, not to protect just yourself, but the persons around you, the loved ones, and probably persons you may not know tomorrow, but you'll get to know eventually in time. The protocols are there for us to try to protect each other again. Hand washing, the face mask, the physical distances, not necessarily social distancing. Cell phones have eliminated the social distancing aspect. We can get closer to persons and be miles away. We know that. So physical distancing is something we need to. Minimize the gatherings. Control, it's difficult to not gather, but if you can control it, that would be something. And respect each other, and just know that if you have any signs and symptoms, testing and just identifying that you may be putting others at risk is important.
St. Lucia has recorded in excess of 11,000 cases of COVID-19 to date, with the number of recoveries of late the bright spot on an otherwise bleak situation. Dr. Felicien says the fight to get the COVID-19 causing virus under control is being undermined by the unhelpful divisions as it relates to the pandemic. He argues that the focus should be on keeping people healthy and using all useful means at our disposal to achieve that goal.
And finally, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says uneven, unfair recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic is eroding trust between the developed and the developing world. Delivering his new policy brief on jobs and poverty eradication at the high-level meeting of jobs and social protection for poverty eradication, he stressed that many developing countries urgently needed a helping hand.
This uneven and fair recovery is eroding trust between the developed and the developing world, trust that is essential to global cooperation in other areas. Today's meeting is an opportunity to change course and to build a recovery that benefits all. The pandemic is set to increase the number of extremely poor people by up to 224 million around the world. More than 3/4 of these new poor are in middle-income countries. And many developing countries face crippling debt service costs while their domestic budgets are stretched and their ability to raise taxes is reduced. These countries urgently need a helping hand. In developed countries, access to vaccines has allowed economies to reopen, while stimulus payments and investments herald projected growth of 5 or 6% this year. In sub-Saharan Africa, that figure is just about 2.5%. A recent report by UNCTAD, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, forecast that the cumulative cost of delayed vaccination alone will amount to $2.3 trillion by 2025, with developing countries bearing the brunt. This could lead not only to a lost decade for development, but to a lost generation of poorly educated, unemployed, disaffected young people.
That's news. But for the very latest, visit us at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. And you can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.